Alright, hello again, this is Jeff Scott. The class is 152-158 Advanced Website Development for the Fall 2016 semester. Our book is Sam's Teach Yourself Bootstrap in 24 Hours. I'm having a little problem with the mic, so I've had to turn it way down because there's so much feedback on it. So hopefully this will come out sounding okay. I'm into Chapter 4. And as you can see, if you take a look on the screen here, we have 5 different objectives. Find out what Normalized.css is and where you can get it. Find out what a CSS reset is, how normalized CSS differs from a CSS reset, the basics of the Bootstrap infrastructure, and how to use CSS to change the Bootstrap defaults. Notice one of the key features of Bootstrap is the Normalized.css file. It's a small file, it says, that web designers can use instead of CSS resets. So, it's included in Bootstrap by default, and you can also find it here. Alright, so let's take a quick look. There it is. Now, I don't expect you to look at that and really get much of anything out of it. Alright, I'm going to come over to here and I'm going to type in Eric Meyer CSS Reset. Alright, and here is Eric Meyer's CSS Reset file, and here's the other reset file. What you'll find are some similarities, what you'll find are some differences. Let's talk about the differences for right now. Basically, with any browser, even if you have no CSS, alright, if you have no cascading style sheet code put in whatsoever, there is still CSS that's automatically added by the browser. What the Eric Meyer CSS Reset attempts to do, by and large, is to remove any and all browser default CSS settings. Alright, in a nutshell, that's what it's doing. On the other hand, the Normalized.css reset, what it realizes is that there is, or at least there are times when you want there to be some browser default CSS settings when or if there's no CSS set up. So it's not nearly as assertive or whatever you'd call it as far as what it has in there. Now, I don't know if that made sense or not, but compared to the Eric Meyer file, it actually is smaller as far as what it does. All right, the full version, as it says, if you minify it, is 2.3K, so it's a small file, and even unminified, it's 7.8K. All right, so the author explains here what a CSS reset is. I'll leave that up there for just a second. As you can see right here, the mention is that a CSS reset file is a CSS file that attempts to reset all HTML elements to some kind of a baseline. So, the most obvious reason to use the CSS reset, just what we just said. All of the elements are set to the same baseline. Alright, so it says when you add additional CSS after the reset, they should look the same in every single browser. Well, that would be an advantage. But CSS resets mean that you're going to cover the same styles multiple times. And in fact, you might have to style things that you could otherwise have left alone. And if the reset is used poorly, it can end up overwriting styles you need for your design. So, as mentioned here, Normalized.css is an alternative to the traditional. And there are other resets other than Eric Meyer's, but his is one of the ones that I know is used most often. Now, hopefully you can look at this and it'll make some sense. It says the next couple figures. It says figure 4.1 shows the same web page first without a reset style and then with one. Okay, so there it is. All right, and you might say, well, wait a minute, what do you mean there's a reset style there? That actually makes a lot of sense. If this has been reset, it's removed all of the default browser settings. So notice that there is automatically some stuff put in here more than anything else. Between paragraphs, there's a blank line, and the paragraphs that come after hyperlinks appear at least to be indented. All right, and again, that's the web page without a reset style. With a reset style, there's basically nothing. Notice how we've got this set up. This looks like an H1 header, paragraph, paragraph. Well, you look here, might be an H1, but since the H1 isn't formatted, it's not any bigger than anything else. You'll notice that everything is basically pushed off. There's no margin, there's no padding, there's no space between anything. So, as mentioned here, it says, as you can see with the CSS resets, all the text is the same size, the line height is always the same, and everything is pretty much, that's pretty well put. It's smashed up against the left side of the browser window. While all the styles are set to a consistent baseline, you're still required to add stuff back again. And it very well is a chance that some of that stuff you're going to have to add back. You really don't care that much about one way or the other. So what they tried to do with the normalized CSS file is to keep the styles that you would still consider to be useful, like topography styles, and attempt to make the styles consistent between browsers. So it attempts to make things consistent. That's the key word. Normalized.css also corrects common bugs in desktop and mobile browsers. All right. So here's the page using only normalized CSS. And if you look at that page does not look that different from this page. This one is, got a little more of a close-up. But the idea is it's pretty much the same thing. So as it says here, down below figure 4.2, which is on page 44 in your text. But as the author says right there, as you can see, headlines, colors, and some of the indentation is still preserved, that by default it makes it more readable. Now, you're still typically going to add your own CSS in, but the point is, your styles, as mentioned, there should be more consistent across different types of browsers. All right? All right, let's talk a little bit about the the Bootstrap infrastructure. Again, as we learned back in Chapter 1, I believe it was, Bootstrap is a framework that you use to help you build web pages. But Bootstrap makes some assumptions about the HTML and the CSS that you need to be aware of. As you learned back in Chapter 1, Bootstrap is an HTML5 framework, which means you have to put the doc type at the top. It's also recommended that when you put your HTML tag, which comes right after the doc tag, or the doc type rather, that you also set the language to EN for English if indeed that's what you're using. Remember that Bootstrap is a mobile-first philosophy, and it really and truly is. So it thinks small first. So web pages should be designed first for the smallest display and then add features for larger displays. All right. As mentioned there, mobile styles are the core of the Bootstrap framework. All right. So you'll always have to put in, for example, this meta tag that you see right here. And hopefully you learned that earlier. As mentioned right below it, the meta tag will ensure mobile browsers render the page correctly from the beginning, and they display the correct amount of zooming. Okay? All right. In Chapter 7, we'll talk about topography, and we'll talk about it in much detail. But they mention here there are some basics that you should be aware of. All right? Bootstrap automatically sets the background color to white, although it's very easy to change it. It uses the font family base, font size base, and line height base. All right? as basically the defaults. Links are only underlined when they're hovered. The global link color is set via link color. But again, you can change these with your own CSS file, or as we'll see much later in the course, in the scaffolding.less file. So let's take a look at the example that's on pages 45, 46, 47, and 48 in your book. Now, I do want to mention something to you. I just want you to hear this. Today is the 3rd of May. All right. So as of right now, what I've been doing is I've been coming back in here and grabbing the source from the author. And you might look at this and go, well, it looks a little funny. There's 24 chapters. I've got all the source put in for chapters 21 through 24, 14 through 20. So as you can see, I've got all that stuff done. And also 13. So I still have to put it in, and don't ask me why, but I just felt like doing it in reverse. So I'm in here. All right, but I'm just going to bring up what the author has. Oops, I guess I don't have it. We'll go and we'll copy the authors and take it from there. So this is our HTML page right here. And I'm literally, for right now, I'm just going to take that and I'm going to save it to the desktop. So that will be index.html. All right, so that's now done. All right, it says verify that the Bootstrap CSS and JavaScript files are in the right location. Change the HTML if you need to. All right, and then add the styles as are shown right here. So we're going to add a new style sheet right there. I'm going to have to do a little dinkering around here, but that's no biggie. Again, this is the way that I set up my CSS. You may or may not agree. I'm just going to call this style.css. Okay? All right. Now, when I go back into here, I'm going to look, and I've got jQuery in here, and it's expecting that I've got, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to change its name from index, and I'm going to change that name from style. Okay, and the way I'm going to change this, just so you see it, is the style is going to be called ch4 style.css, and the index is going to be called ch4 index. All right, then I'm going to grab these two, and in my Bootstrap that I had been using previously, up in here, I'm going to just drop them in right here. So paste. So there's ch4 index, and this will have to go up into the CSS folder. All right, so I'm going to move that there. And Chapter 4 style, but I didn't want to move this. All right. So let's see, there's our link to the Bootstrap, and let's put in our link. I'm hoping I didn't leave anything out, but we're going to find out very quickly. All right, so what have we done here? Well, as you can see, we've changed the font type. We've changed the background color. All right, we've added some bolding here. So let's take a look at that ch4, that index file, wrong one, and see exactly what we did do, the CSS file. Our text decoration is set to underline, which means that by default, when most of the time, our hyperlinks are going to be underlined. We changed the background color. We added some margin. We added some padding and margin. I took out the padding, but added some margin for our unordered list. And for our DD list, we added some indentation. The point is, what we've done is we have overridden what would happen naturally in here by putting in our own style sheet. All right? Just so you see this, because I think this is important, I'm going to do one more thing here. And that is, I'm going to go back to here, and where we just put that in, I'm going to comment this line out. All right? Now you just saw what that looked like. When I refresh, all right, it's really evident here what's going on. The fact that, all right, again, the background color, the hyperlinks, the padding and the margin, etc. So you can really see that. I'm going to leave that one there. This one I'm going to go and redo, so I'm going to take this back out again. All right, and I've saved that. So now you see how it looks, again, for lack of better words, a before and an after picture. Before and after. Hopefully that's a little more visual, and that helps with your understanding of what's going on here. All right? So again, there's the authors on page 47 in the text. There's the before picture, and there's the after picture. Unfortunately, with the author, as you can tell, the author's using black and white text, so it's very hard to tell looking at it in the textbook. All right, so in Chapter 4, we talked about Bootstrap, the normalized CSS file, the difference between a normalized CSS and a CSS reset. All right? So their Q&A here. If I use normalized.css, why do I need Bootstrap? Well, it's something that you should use in conjunction to Bootstrap. But if all you use is normalized.css, as mentioned there, you lose many of the advantages of using Bootstrap. Again, what if I want to reset the styles away from normalized? You just saw a quick example of that. You mentioned only a few basic styles that Bootstrap applies. Are there more? Yes. We're going to talk about them in the next part of the book. All right. So for the quiz, number 1, normalized.css is a CSS reset file. That's false. It's an alternative to a CSS reset file. Number 2, normalized.css will help HTML5 elements display better in IE 9. That's actually true. Number 3, which of these is something a CSS reset file will not do? And the answer is C. Make HTML5 elements work in older browsers. That's that HTML5 shiv that we talked about earlier. Number 4, which of the following is not a reason to avoid using CSS reset? And the answer would be A, that they're too hard to use. They're actually fairly simple to use. Number 5, normalized.css keeps the styles that are useful. Pretty much is true. All right, from a Bootstrap perspective, that's true. Number 6, which of the following is not a bug that normalized CSS fixes? The answer is none of the above. It fixes all of these. Number 7, what does it mean that Bootstrap is mobile first? And the answer is B. It puts mobile design at the same priority as non-mobile design. Okay? Number 8, what color does Bootstrap set the background to on a web page? You already know that that's A, white. Number 9, true or false, links are automatically underlined in Bootstrap? False. They're automatically not underlined unless you hover over them. And number 10, all right, true or false, it is impossible to adjust the default styles that Bootstrap adds. False. And again, you already saw that. So that's it for Chapter 4. I hope to come back a little bit and go over and go into next Chapter 5, so we'll be into Part 2 of the book, Building and Managing Web Pages with Bootstrap.